Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. Tensions on the Korean Peninsula have reached new heights. On October 15th, North Korea suddenly blew up two railway lines connecting North and South Korea, with explosions shocking the world. According to reports, North Korea destroyed parts of the Gyeongui Line and Donghae Line railways, with explosion occurring just 10 meters away from the military demarcation line between the two Koreas. The act was carried out without prior notice, violating the Korean Armistice agreement. In response, the South Korean government issued a stern condemnation and ordered the military to carry out retaliatory strikes south of the MDL, invoking their right to self-defense. How might this escalation on the Korean Peninsula impact the geopolitics of the Asia-Pacific region? Joining us today are Hwang Hui-bo, National Jeonju University Department of Diplomacy Professor, and Stephen Tan, International Policy Advisory Group Managing Director. A warm welcome to both of you on the show. Before demolishing the railroads, North Korea announced it would completely sever land routes between the two Koreas to strengthen its defenses. North Korean state media also reported that 1.4 million young people had petitioned to enlist or rejoin the military. So, Professor Hwang, my first question is about the timing. Why would North Korea do this right before the U.S. presidential election? This is quite a sensitive timing. Do you think that North Korea tries to do this to pressure the United States?
I think we can guess that why the North Korean government has been doing that because of the two major factors. First is, of course, the U.S. presidential election that is upcoming so soon. And second, when the South Korean government is leaning towards the U.S. while not, paying too much attention to the North. So when the two factors either happen individually or collide, then you can see some dramatic change in the North Korean government's attitude towards both Seoul and Washington. Now, November 5th is the day for American people to vote for their own president. So I do not exclude the possibility that the North Korean government is calculating a very good timing in order to either threaten or to blackmail Washington and its allies, including South Korea, because this is one of the possibly most fragile moments for the United States before and right after the possible leadership change. So Kim and the North would like to do something to garner some benefits if either Washington or Seoul agreed to make some compromise. And we can see this kind of strategy has been undertaken by Kim's father, starting from the 1990s. Because of this kind of strategy, could North Korea get some economic aid programs from the US, the European Union, and some of the Northeast Asian countries like Japan and South Korea? So what I can say is that, we shouldn't feel surprised at seeing Kim's decision like that, but we shouldn't pay less attention to that either, because according to a lot of us outside the Korean Peninsula, the Kim regime is not very much predictable. So we have to make sure that everything should be under control during the US presidential election.
So in your opinion, this is nothing new, right? So this has been adopted by Kim's father, the former leader of North Korea, by doing the same, attracting global attention.
Mm-hmm. Not only attracting global attention, but also to undertake some brinkmanship strategy. Mm-hmm. So if you don't agree with me, then I'm going to do something crazy so that please...
So they can get what they want in
please
return.
Feel afraid, then get me something I want.
Yes. So a quick follow-up question for you, Stephen. I look at President Trump's social media, and he posted that he is the only one in the whole world who is able to solve the situation in North Korea. What do you make of Trump's comments?
Well, we're getting very close to November 5th. It's actually less than 2 weeks from the day of U.S. election. Previously, people talked about the October surprises, that you have to take this into the totality of the global circumstances, not just Korean Peninsula. Look at what happened in the rest of the world. what in the Middle East Israel's been taking escalated actions and tensions vis-a-vis Hamas and Iran, and you look at what happened. China's been launching drills, the escalated tensions in South China Sea. Russians been taking actions. It all leads to something that is happening at this moment, which is the upcoming U.S. elections. I think many countries, the hotspots geopolitically, are trying to make efforts to, make some marks prior to the U.S. election, with the possible view of, getting some impact on influencing the process and outcome of the U.S. election. Now, getting back to your question, Betty, I think this is a campaign rhetorics, but sometimes it works. That the former President Trump is basically telling the whole world and also his constituents that, look at what happened right now in the Korean Peninsula. Well, actually, to the contrary, in my humble view, Biden administration has been working hand in hand with the allies, in this region, Japan and South Korea included, particularly, to stabilize and de-escalate the tensions in the particularly Korean Peninsula for the past 3.5 years. But getting close to the election, if you hear former President Trump's campaign rhetorics, and with the with the actions recently taken by Kim, it's easily interpreted in a way that Trump Biden administration cannot get hold of what's going on there, and then North Korea has some, not just the military actions. South Korea has recently declared that North Korea declares that South Korea as an enemy, and then announced the intention for the unification. So this is what I call the sort of a Korean Peninsula's version of the two-state solution, and how U.S. administration, this and the next administrations, will take into the new circumstances and the latest situation. So I think all in all may have some change in direction after the U.S. election. In November and December towards the end of the year, and of course, depending on the process and outcome of the U.S. election.
So, Stephen, you talk about the actions taken by the Kim regime in terms of declaring that South Korea is officially their enemy and amending the constitution, and they abandoned the peaceful unification option. So, Professor Huang, what do you think, what kind of message is the North trying to send to South Korea?
The message the North is trying to send is, first, I'm mad. 2, I'm gradually impatient. But, that is why some people say that Kim of the North even went to the bombing site to observe the bombing. I don't know whether or not that's true, but I think I saw the picture, but I didn't have time to confirm it. So this message sent to South Korea probably was a little bit effective, because we have seen that the South Korean central government has announced that some cities and counties near the DMZ line on the Korean Peninsula should abandon using balloons to send those flyers against the North Korean regime. And that message was announced after the bombing right near the DMZ line. So I think at least the south side, the southern side, shows some concession towards the north, while the south side, again, took some more assertive measures by cooperating with the U.S. in terms of sending advanced air fighters to fly over the DMZ to show to the South that actually I'm ready and I got Big Brother behind me. Mm-hmm. So I think the South is using two-tier strategies. or two-tier approaches. One is soft, another is hard to respond back to the North.
You talk about the situation where North Korea claimed that South Korea is sending their drones and spreading the anti-North Korean leaflets, which may cause fury in the North Korea. Do you think that, Stephen, the situation in the Korean Peninsula the tensions might even further escalate?
I suspect that Kim has made or is making his mark right before the U.S. general election, and also making some formal and official announcements in terms of the amendment of the Constitution and the U.S. The unification stance, as you just pointed out, Betty. So I would suspect that the North Korea will wait until the U.S. election to see who's going to be running the country starting from next year, because it will play a critical role, not just in the geopolitical tensions in this part of the world, but the rest, Middle East, Eurasian, and Russian included. So I think the whole world is on the wait and see mode to see, what would the outcome be? Because if you think about this, it's only less than 2 weeks. Hopefully, knock on wood, that there will be no commotions,
right.
no political violence. There will be a clear-cut election outcome, and then it will be. I wouldn't say it will be another new ball game, but it could drastically change some directions. For example, former President Trump has made it very clear that he pretty much rely on the personal relationship and the bilateral relationship between, in this particular case, him himself and the President Kim. And instead of working with allies in this region, AUKUS, particularly South Korea, Japan. So it creates some different thoughts, I would imagine, from the perspective of North Korea to try to make some further grounds. So making strong personal and political marks prior to the election of the United States, and try to see if there's some change in directions and make further grounds afterwards, depending on who the new president is. It is how I see what it is right now in terms of the overall assessment of the current situation.
Professor Huang?
Yeah, I think one more factor that we should pay more attention to is who will be the next South Korean president. Because, one of the big reasons why the North Korean government is trying so hard to threaten the South side is because the North would like to see a South Korean leader who is more sympathetic or more willing to deal with the North. So we can see after the mid-1990s, all these concessions and cooperations between Washington and Pyongyang. And now, 2000, Kim Dae-jung, who favored the sunshine policy from the South, began to approach the North. It ended up with the North-South Joint Statement or North-South Joint Declaration, which began the building of a lot of constructions or mutual projects, including the 2 lines of transportation bombed by the North recently. And after some threatening in the mid-2010s, then the South Koreans elected President Moon. And President Moon would like to amend or to improve ties with the North. So he tried very hard, but he failed, not because of the attitude of the Kim, but because of the COVID. So I think the wish of Kim in Pyongyang is to help the South elect a president who is not declined to support America, but who is willing to lean a little bit more toward the South, toward the North.
So you talk about the leadership in the South also plays a very important role. So let's talk about the current president, Yoon Yeol. It seems that according to the recent poll, he has very low approval rating and his dissatisfaction rate is up to 70%. And it seems that North Korea is not happy about him. Do you think that the recent explosion or retaliatory actions from the North to the South is targeting at the current government or the current leader?
99.9%. Because, see, the Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang has asserted that in January 2024, that unification, the term, should be removed from the DPRK constitution, which hasn't been implemented. We don't know why, but the recent amendment to the DPRK constitution contains nothing about the removal of unification. But Kim also insists that the South Korean is a hostile foreign enemy, as we just discussed. And he also contended that he wouldn't hesitate to attack its rival if North Korea's sovereignty is infringed. So I think, not only towards the Biden administration, but also towards the South Korean government, we know why the Kim regime in Pyongyang has been so assertive or aggressive. But as I said, if there is a leadership change in a few years, then probably we're going to see a very new scenario between the North and the South.
Mm-hmm. So, Professor Huang, you talked about the historic context from the back in the older days. And also, we understand that back in 1953, the North and South Korea signed the Armistice agreement, but they never had a peace treaty until the year 2018. We do see that Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, the then president, concluded the Panmunjom Declaration. And back then, well, it seems things to be, I won't say like very peaceful, but there weren't any big gestures like this until now. So why at this moment, why do you think that the North Korea is taking this kind of drastic actions, in addition to the factors that we talk about, U.S. presidential election?
Well,
Stephen?
I guess it's a different world now. With a change in power in the neighboring big countries, from North Korea's perspective, of course. You see what's going on in Russia, in China. Then I think I wouldn't just compare with sort of the pacts that entered into between North Korea and South Korea back then. I just want to comment a little bit on the South Korea's stance, on Yoon's stance. I think. President Yoon seems to be struggling very hard to improve his approval rating. There will be the next presidential election in the years to come, but I understand that I won't comment too much about the domestic politics of South Korea, but my understanding is that it's more relating to the domestic issues. Now, in terms of the foreign policy, there have been some challenges. But then, South Korea's relationship generally with Japan seems to be improving, two directions. And then, of course, South Korea's relationship with the Biden administration, it's on the track. There are some tough issues that have been ironed out or in the process of being ironed out, including the cost allocations and cost sharing, and also previously some issues relating to the nuclear missiles and nuclear powers. But then, all in all, I will take it as it's more domestic issues driven to drive down his popularity. Whether or not there is a change in the administration in the years to come, or President Yoon would have a chance to improve his popularities. Of course, to a certain degree, it also depends on the foreign policy and international issues, and that also relates to how he handles the escalated tensions with the North Korea, and also the next president of the United States.
Definitely, there must be internal and external factors affecting the situation in the Korean Peninsula. So we understand that the South Korea is sided definitely with the United States, Japan, and other allies, and the North is very close to China and Russia. How do you think that external factors affect the situation on the Korean Peninsula, Professor?
To me, I think for North Korea, mainland China is main economic supporter, while Russia is North Korea's main military supporter. So just recently, Putin of Russia just reminded a lot of people in the world that Russia and North Korea has a joint defense treaty. So that means if the US and its allies would like to attack North Korea, then Moscow will respond. I don't know how Moscow is going to respond, perhaps by nuclear or by non-nuclear. We don't know, but then at least that is a signal sent by Putin to the rest of the world that don't touch North Korea. Okay, but back to the issue of mainland China. I think mainland China, as I said, is economically beneficial for North Korea. Mainland China knows that it needs North Korea as either buffer zone or as a bargaining chip to deal with Washington. That is why we have seen continued support of Beijing for Pyongyang. But I also think that the more hostile inter-Korean relations, the more possible that Beijing's influence on the Taiwan Strait will grow. The reason is, if there is a growing big trouble on the Korean Peninsula, then Washington has to speak to Beijing for some possible or even common solution for the inter-Korean troubles. Then, what would be the bargaining chip for Beijing to speak to Washington? One of the biggest bargaining chips is, of course, Taiwan. Mm-hmm. So we don't know how Washington is going to respond to Beijing if the troubles on the Korean Peninsula continue. But my hunch is that Taiwan needs to be cautious because any major changes in, say, Russo-Ukrainian armed conflicts, in the Middle East, the Israeli-Hamas wars, or on the Korean Peninsula would affect changes in the Taiwan Straits, especially relationship or the balance of relations, the balance of power between Taipei and Beijing.
A quick follow-up question. How should Taiwan position ourselves, given the situation?
I think the current Taiwan leadership has denounced the missile launching of North Korea just in October, I think. So I do not think North Korea will see Taiwan as a friendly country. And actually, North Korea see Taiwan as part of China, province of China. So I think Taiwan needs to be needs to be smarter in terms of responding to any possible North Korean measures violating international norms or principles, because Taiwan is not in the game yet. But if Taiwan wants to jump in by itself, then Taiwan needs to know that, I don't think North Koreans are shooting missiles on Taiwan, but North Koreans has its own hackers, its,
right.
Cyber warriors, then Taiwan is going to have some big troubles.
Yes. Talking about forging alliances, we understand that South Korea has been forging alliances with Japan, the US, and also 8 other countries to establish the Multilateral Sanction Monitoring Team, MSMT, to enforce sanctions against North Korea. But when it comes to Kim, do you think that this kind of sanctions are effective, or Kim is just unbothered by any forms of sanction? Stephen?
Well, I think the sanctions are sanctions, but in terms of the actual effectiveness, Pyongyang is still heavily reliant on both China and Russia, and it's been playing the cards between Russia and China up until now. So I wouldn't say that sanction is useless or the function is diminishing, but I would say that a lot of which depends on the great powers and the process and the potential outcome outside of this region, such as the war at this moment between Ukraine and Russia. The North Korea has been sending troops to Russia to launch the war, and then also there are some trade deals between Russia and North Korea, as you know. So I think yes, I think China. The issue in the North Peninsula is something that very high on the agenda when it comes to the talks, the high-level talks between the United States and China. So there are some bargaining chips, or there are some issues that are high in the ladder of importance between Washington and Beijing to talk about. But I think it's interrelated. It relates to, as I just pointed out, U.S. relationship with China on other fronts, but then how to deal with the Korean Peninsula issues. I would say it's very high on the agenda between the next rounds of the high-level U.S.-China talk.
So definitely, I guess we have to wait until the results of the U.S. presidential election and see what is going to happen next. And hopefully, no more big conflicts happening in this region and in the world. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.